So in some sense, you can say there that the training organization isn't actually providing the training, it's providing the mechanism by which the company is sharing know-how, right? Getting know-how to where it needs to be.
That's true.
And that's your function. But yeah, the great challenge in that is,
is training really doing something?
If I'm the guy with the know-how, you know, how do I feel about having being taken away from me and given others without me getting any credit?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a huge issue as you move in this. Usually, in tech companies, I mean, I don't know if you're a tech company or not, but often where there's, you know, a bunch of engineers sitting around, it's a relatively easy sell if you can make sure these guys spend less time repeating themselves in the long run. So, okay, so I won't spend a long time on this part. I think I've already talked about this a little bit. But, you know, part of the, you know, the idea that you're working within a construct, a structure that your organization has put in place over time. You have a way of doing things. You have design constructs. You have typical approaches to things. And, you know, any organization will have some things that have been demonstrated to work at home. You know, this is not just research shows that web-based scenarios have worked but research shows web-based scenarios have worked here, and we believe it. You'll have some demonstrated truths, and you'll have some hypotheses about where things could make a difference inside your organization. And I think as you're looking at this year, it's time for you to be able to come back and say those demonstrated truths that you haven't been able to negotiate with your business partners about, because even though they've been fairly broadly demonstrated inside your organization, these guys don't buy into them, are time to hit them hard. And that's where, again, culture will come into play. That's where having the other business sponsors be there for the conversation will help you a lot. Otherwise, you know, that becomes a little bit tougher conversation of, this is the best I can do. Do you have some other hypotheses for how we can help you get the numbers down? The list on the left will vary by organization. The list on the right will vary by organization. But, you know, the short advice there is, this year, take the things on the left and push them hard. You're never going to have a better opportunity to do that. And similarly, plant the seed for the things on the right. You won't be able to get much money to do that, but you'll be able to get sanction, which is, you know what, if I think I can get another 10 or 15% out year, if, you know, 3 out of the 4 of these things work, you'll be able to get the sanction to proceed with those experiments, which I think it's been sometimes hard to run an experiment in the past with somebody who doesn't want their piece of training to go south. Relatively complicated slide with a very simple message underneath it. I won't go to this in a lot of detail, but one of the areas that I think we've been frustrated in our conversations with our clients over the years are conversations which delve into the idea of blended learning at the wrong level of detail. So we do a lot of content development, and so we run into lots of different situations and lots of different environments with our clients. Sometimes those environments are clients where we will have business stakeholders, sometimes members from the training organization, who will come in and say, you know what, these are the blended components we want. Or we'll say, I know you guys typically do it this way, but this time we want a webinar. Or this time we're going to have an online assessment. Or this time we're going to add a wiki to it because I heard wikis are cool. The challenge with those are that those ideas are very difficult to address head-on without a lot of argument structure behind them. And in fact, what we found is that decisions around which components to put in a blended learning program are actually not really that difficult to make when you stare at them if you make them in the right order. But if you start in the wrong place, it almost feels like a religious war. So sort of the key of this is, instead of starting with the conversation of wiki's right for you, wiki's not right for you, is simply go through the decisions in a particular order, and those decisions will relatively straightforwardly usually lead you to an answer on the specifics. Okay? So, again, standard instructional design stuff. So we start with critical mistakes as our spec for what a program should accomplish. It should eliminate these mistakes. You can put performance objectives in there. Identify the root causes of why things go south. Okay, again, lots of work on that. There's some standard categories. Do I lack information? Do I lack feedback? So Major has a great book on this one. What's the reason for that? Identify then how you're going to remediate that. Oftentimes the remediations are fairly one-to-one with what the root causes are. You know, if I don't have any feedback, find some way of getting me feedback in the field. If I don't have the skill, yes, provide me some practice. If I need some information about how to configure, get me some information, whatever it is. You know, now you're at that point with the remediation strategies. Now sort of the infrastructure you have and the shape of the delivery target audience come into play. You start worrying about how many people do we have? Are they co-located or not co-located? So this begins to get into delivery strategies. Is this a group where if I actually give them something to do where their manager is supposed to coach them, it will happen? Or is it like the other 93% of the world? Okay, is there a way I can deliver them performance support? Is there a way I can get it to them conveniently? On and on and on. Or do I need to bring them in for a group training thing because there's a social aspect I need to accomplish with this that I can't accomplish without bringing people in face to face? And then once you're down at the delivery strategy phase, then you're into sort of components. Okay, great. I now know that I'm going to have this much that I'm going to do through on-the-job delivery strategy, this much I'm going to do through performance support. And given that these guys already have X system, the performance support is going to be another link on their web page, blah, 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 blah. That stuff kind of falls out. So it's all about just the simple order of decisions so that there's an argument for what the components are, as opposed to, we went back to the back room. And what that tends to look like in practice is something like this. So, apologies for the name. We really struggled to to come up with something that would not sound. Give your business stakeholder a blam. But the idea is very simple. It's a task model on the left-hand side. There's some strategies which are labeled across the top. We can do some live training, some web-based training. We stop at performance support. The list would go on to the right. Inside the strategies, there's some specific delivery components which would fit into your curriculum. And then all this is just the mapping to say, yep, we're going to accomplish what we need to accomplish for the root causes of poor performance in recruiting by covering that in orientation. And you know what? We believe the orientation session can handle those. We're done. Or alternatively, managing performance is a lot tougher. We'll do a little bit on orientation, but we're going to put you in a test store practice environment, and we're going to give you a bunch of job aids that are going to support you with that. Whatever it is. And you can begin to say, okay, now you wanted the wiki, right? Okay, so we can do a wiki, and instead of using this thing we call DealerNet, which is a central system for doing that, we can use a wiki for that component, right? Plugs right in there, provides the performance support. Let's talk about the pros and cons. And then you can have a reasoned discussion to lay out why did you choose this over the other and give the business stakeholder a response to it. And in fact, so a little story from actually this chart is a sanitized but real chart. Came from a project we did, it's been about 5 years ago at this point. And it turns out when we did this analysis, we came back to the client who had asked us for 2 to 4 weeks of live training and said, we're actually not going to fly anybody we don't think you should fly anybody anywhere. We think that the training you need can be done through e-learning. We think you need something on the order of 7 to 8 hours of actual training. We think most of this can be done through this performance support approach. And we sort of walked through the rationale. And the question came back, said, all that sounds great, so where's the training? It was actually, the training guys were trying to sell the business people against actually having training. But it began. It was actually a conversation without all the legwork. We would have said, Uncle, you can pay us. We'll go build the training for you. Or we're not going to. I'm not going to turn down your money. But without the legwork and saying, okay, let me tell you, here's what we saw as the problem, and here's how we're going to fix the problem, and this is what we think is the least cost fix for you. You tell me where you see a problem we haven't solved. And then you're probably right. We'll go back and we'll figure out how we'll fix that problem. So let's see where the problem is. Giving you the legwork to do this, allowed us to have that conversation. Stakeholders said, "Fine, go ahead," and it turns out the solution worked great. So the solution, big win, big change in mind for the business stakeholders' attitude towards training in that